ॐ पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते. So welcome to our Saturday morning session. We shall continue on our journey of some understanding of the Vedas as the foundational knowledge for all the Upanishads and other ancient Indian writings. Now in the last session, we talked about how Darwin's theory is a mere fiction. And there have been some comments on that which I saw on YouTube. So I would like to address those comments as well in the today's session. Now, so far we have seen that the Purusha or the universal consciousness pervades everything in this universe. Actually, the whole universe is part of his body. And therefore, everything that we see in this universe is actually part of that universal consciousness. And therefore, it has been said in the Vedic science that the consciousness, because the Brahma is conscious or the Purusha is conscious, and therefore consciousness has been actually displayed in variety of forms in the universe. The first form is called mineral regime, where consciousness is very, very low. Like we see chemical reactions in mountains, in valleys, on the earth. So that is very low level of consciousness. But there is consciousness even in the inanimate existence in this universe. The second is consciousness in the plants. The plants don't talk, they don't walk, but they rise. They go up in the sky. They come out with fruits, vegetables, flowers. So the plants have a low level of consciousness, but it is higher than mineral regime. So the mineral regime has the lowest consciousness, followed by the plant regime, which has higher than mineral regime. Then we have animal regime, which has higher consciousness than the plant regime. They can walk, perhaps they also talk among themselves. There is a movement. You can see, there's some choice also. They can apply their faculties to some extent. And, but they are not as developed as human beings. So the human consciousness is the highest in the manifest universe. And then the pure consciousness of the Brahman. So these are the 5 layers of consciousness. Lowest in the mineral regime, then higher in plant, and then still higher in animal, and the highest in the human being, and of course the universal consciousness which pervades everything that exists in this universe. So the Brahma or the Purus is conscious, and only consciousness can create things. Inanimate thing or things with lower consciousness, for example a stone which has the lowest level of consciousness, cannot create anything. It cannot create a cell. That is what Charles Darwin said. There is no evidence of a stone creating a cell or a mountain becoming a human being, even in billions of years. Charles Darwin has not given any evidence of such nature anywhere. In fact, the creation which we see in this universe, they have come into different forms. The creator or the Purusha or the universal consciousness itself has given birth to different species of life in different forms. And those species of life have their different and distinct characteristics based on the level of their consciousness. Like we are human beings, we have highest level of consciousness. We can create a city, we can create a high rise building, we can create an aircraft, we can create a submarine, but a mountain cannot do that. A stone cannot do that. The sand cannot do that. That is not possible. It has not been proven by anybody so far. So it would be wrong to say that the inanimate thing can create a cell. The cell is actually a different, in fact, there are two different variations of life. One is the matter, and second is the consciousness or chetana. The two together come in the highest form in human being, where the body is made of matter and consciousness is given at the time of conception. The two together are able to create variety of things in this universe. But the matter alone cannot create anything. A glass here lying, it can lie for millions of years. It will not be able to create a cell. That's not possible. So we must understand that an inanimate matter or matter with very, very low level of consciousness cannot create anything. The creation happens as the level of consciousness rises, and Brahma has the highest level of consciousness from where everything devolves. It is the theory, in fact, some of the scientists in the modern era, they don't call it the theory of evolution. They call it a theory of devolution, that from the Brahma, from the universal consciousness, everything has devolved down to the universe. So this is one of the things which I wanted to explain, given various comments in on the YouTube on the last video. Now, it has also been stated in Purusha Sukta that if we want to really transcend the cycle of death and birth, then we must become one with the Purus, or we must understand what the Purusa is. Now, that Purusa is sitting in everybody's heart. That Atma, which we call, is Purusha. When the Atma leaves our body, or you can call it consciousness, it doesn't matter. When that leaves our body becomes inanimate and cannot sustain itself. The sense organs do not function. The body starts decomposing after that, because it is the consciousness which keeps the body in that form in which it functions. So consciousness, as soon as it leaves a dead person, is actually called mitti in our local language. ये मिट्टी हो गया. Even in the Western civilization, they say that John has passed away while his body is lying there. So what has passed away is the consciousness of John. Now that consciousness has gone away, and therefore the body is not able to function. So there are very two distinct elements, and this has been deeply clarified by Lord Krishna in Bhagavad Gita in chapter 7, that he has called it a Parashakti, which is consciousness, and Aparashakti, which is divided into 8 parts, that is Akash, Vayu, Agni, Jal, Prithvi, Man, Buddhi, and Ahankar. These are the 8 elements. Let me tell them in English, that sky or space, air, then fire, water, earth, then mind, intellect, and ego. These are 8 parts which are made up of Aparashakti. That is the inferior, or we can say material power of the Supreme. And then Parashakti, which gives the life force or the consciousness. This is very much clear. This has also been repeated in different form in chapter 15 of Bhagavad Gita. So one should be very clear that The inanimate prakriti or nature cannot act on its own. It has to be united with the consciousness to make things happen. And human form is the highest form in which this unity takes place, where the mind and intellects are developed, and we can create variety of things. We can create innumerable things like we have done. We can see what are the things which we have created in the last, say, 200 years. So this is the process which happens, and this is the process we can see with our common sense in this world. Now, let's go to the modern science. Modern science actually deals with matter. It observes them in the laboratories, or they can use certain instruments. But ultimately, those instruments are used by humans. You can have a telescope, but ultimately the eyes have to be there to see that. The telescope will not be of any use unless somebody with the eyes is able to see what is lying on the other side of the telescope. So ultimately, it is the life force which matters and which has been explained in plenty in Upanishads. But we will come to that point later on. So modern science is basically dealing with matter. They analyze matter because they cannot analyze consciousness. Consciousness does not come within the purview of analysis. Our sense organs are not capable of either seeing or hearing or smelling the consciousness. We cannot taste the consciousness. It's not possible because it is the consciousness which gives power to our sense organs. So consciousness is much higher. Only those people who have raised their consciousness to a much higher level can actually understand consciousness. And that is why our saints and rishis, who were able to raise their consciousness to a new level, were able to actually understand things which we do not understand with our sense organs and mind and intellect put together. So that is the difference we have to understand, that modern science can never understand things which are non-manifest, and consciousness is non-manifest. It is not within the purview of our sense organs. हिंदी में कहते हैं कि वो इंद्रियों से ग्रहण नहीं की जा सकती, इंद्रियां वहां तक नहीं पहुंच सकती हैं, माइंड भी वहां तक नहीं पहुंच सकता है, बुद्धि भी वहां तक नहीं पहुंच सकती है. So these are the regions that we are not able to understand the pure consciousness or the universal consciousness. But once we reach our level of consciousness, we can understand that. It is of example that, for example, a pilot flies an aircraft. An ordinary citizen goes and tries to fly, he cannot, because his knowledge is not enough to make him understand the whole process. So he has to take a training to upgrade his knowledge. He has to take some practical lessons to upgrade his knowledge. And then he is able to become a pilot. Similarly, once we make an effort, once we do what we call, a sort of tapasya, or we work very hard to raise our consciousness through variety of means, then we would be able to reach that state. And then we can understand the universal consciousness better than what we do today. So let us be very clear that Indian saints and Indian sages, because they raised their consciousness, they were able to understand the, the Purusha, the greater consciousness, the higher consciousness, and the universal consciousness, the Paramatma himself. So this is how it is properly explained in Vedas and in Upanishads and also in Bhagavad Gita. Now today I would like to cover a little bit about other scientific knowledge which has been given in the Vedas. I'll just touch it briefly. I will cover a few of the verses from Rig Veda and other Vedas. Now, these verses are dealing primarily with astronomical realities because the universe contains billions of galaxies, lot of solar systems, and then each solar system has its own sphere. So this has been explained in very brief terms in our Vedic science. And it has been explained thousands of years back in time. The modern science has been able to discover it in the last, after 17th century only. Our sages did it many thousand years back in time. In fact, the best example of this is if you look at some of the writings of Aryabhatta, and even before that, you will find how developed our astronomical science was at that time. So I will go into the Vedas, which are actually predated than Surya Siddhant and Aryabhatta. Vedas, in my opinion, are at least 10,000 years old. And what they have explained, I will read some of those verses today, and then we will try to understand what they mean. Now, this is Rig Veda, 10th Mandala, 22nd Sukta, and 14 verse. This reads like this. In English, I'll read it. The earth is devoid of hands and legs, yet it moves ahead. All the objects over the earth also move with it. It moves around the sun. Now, our ancestors knew thousands of years back in time that earth revolves around the sun and it also moves on its own axis. And it clearly says that it has no hands and legs. Obviously, it doesn't have that. We see that. It is a solid, substance made of minerals, and it moves on its axis, and it also moves around the sun. And all those things which are on the earth naturally move with it. So this is in Rig Veda. Then Rig Veda again, 10th Mandala, 149th Sukta and verse number 1, or mantra 1. The sun has tied earth and other planets through attraction and moves them around itself, as if a trainer moves newly trained horses around itself holding their reins. So this is a very clear pronouncement that the sun has a power which actually attracts all the planets in the solar system. And because of that attraction, all the planets move around the sun. They have, of course, different paths, but they move around the sun as the example has been given, as a newly, a new trainer, move the horses around himself. So exactly the same way, all the planets move around the sun. This was pronounced thousands of years back in time by our ancestors. Then let's go to Rig Veda, Mandala 1, Sukta 164, verse 29. The axle of the earth does not get rusted. The earth continues to revolve on its axle. Now, this is the clear indication that it revolves on its own axis. This is what scientists have come to know very recently, say about 200 years back, even less. But our ancestors knew this thousands of years back in time, that the earth revolves on its own axis, and the axis doesn't get rusted, means it remains stable all the time. It keeps moving on its axis. Now, Another verse from Rig Veda, which is the fifth mandala, 40th Sukta and fifth mantra. O sun, when you are blocked by the one whom you gifted your own light, that is naturally the moon, then earth will be surprised by the sudden darkness. Now, this is what they call, you know, sun eclipse or the moon eclipse. So they talk about eclipsage, how it happens. And it says that the sun is blocked by the moon and the earth is enveloped by darkness. And it also says that the sun gifted its light to the moon, which now we know through the scientific knowledge as well, that the moon gets its light from the sun. It reflects the sunlight. And this was said by our ancestors several thousand years back in time. So these, this also is uh, an indication that how our astronomy and the knowledge of planets and the solar system was so strong and well developed. Let's take another verse. This is eighth mandala of Rig Veda, Sukta 12, mantra 28. All planets remain stable because they come closer to the sun due to attraction. Their speed of coming closer increases proportionately. Now, this shows the velocity, the movement, and the what we call the cycle of revolution of each of the planet, how it differs. It has been explained beautifully in very mathematical terms here. And this has been explained in greater detail in Surya Siddhant. Surya Siddhant is actually an amazing writing. Some say it is 8,000 years old. Some believe that it is maybe 4,000 years old, but whatever may be the antiquity, doesn't matter. It gives very precise uh, details of the revolution of each planet around the sun. How many days, how many years, how many days, how many minutes, and how many seconds. This has been explained in Surya Siddhant, though the minutes and second and those things have been converted in the modern sense, but this has been explained in our ancient uh, calculator of time in the Surya Siddhant. And this has actually been deciphered by some of the Western, astronomers who have read Surya Siddhant and translated these verses in English, both the British and the Americans. So this is how the Veda provide the knowledge of the astronomy. These are some of the uh, you know examples of the astronomical knowledge contained in the Vedas. The reason I'm taking this is that the Vedic knowledge is the foundation of all the subsequent explanations that have come in our ancient writings, whether they are in mathematical field, whether they are in astronomical field, whether they are in a spiritual field, whether they are the physical explanation of the universe. All that has been contained briefly in the Vedas. Now, there is one very interesting verse in Rig Veda, and this is in the 10th mandala, again 71 Sukta and 4th mantra, which tells that this Vedic knowledge cannot be revealed to everybody. It is revealed only to those who deserve it and who have attained appropriate training for that. So this reads like this in English. Some perceive the speech but perceive it not. Some listen to it but listen it not because they cannot understand what it is. For others, it reveals its secrets, just as finely clothed, faithful wife displays her body to her husband. So, if one is competent enough, the Vedas can reveal its knowledge to those people in a way this has been given here. Otherwise, it is not easy to understand the Vedic knowledge. Now, after taking some of these astronomical facts given in Rig Veda, I would also like to mention something very interesting here, that today the process of carbon dating and analyzing the antiquity of different objects and civilizations is not actually perfect. You date a particular civilization, like, for example, Indus Valley civilization. People have dated it differently. Some have gone to 1500 BC, some have gone to 4000 BC, some people have dated it even older than that, 6000 BC, based on the similar kind of carbon dating and the objects which have been found in excavation and the kind of archaeological layers which have been discovered during the excavations. But if you go back in time, these archaeological evidence, they start deteriorating, they disappear. Sometimes they actually misguide you also. Let me tell you one example. When I was in France, the Indian, particularly some of the Rajasthani old artifacts were very popular. People used to carry old, for example, these doors or some of the old wooden furniture to France, and they were sold as if they are 200, 300, 500, 600 years old. There's a big market. I have been to that market many times, and I have talked to some of those experts, and they give you details that yes, this come from Jodhpur in Rajasthan, and this was manufactured or made, say, 400 years back in time, and they produce some sort of written text to prove that. Written text, not the ancient time, but written recently, but distorted later on. When I came back to Rajasthan and tried to discover how it is happening, people told me that these are not more than 6 months to 1 year old. They are properly distorted. A particular chemical and they are a kind of sand and other things are used to make them look old. And this has been told to me by those who are exporting these artifacts to Europe. So you can see you can distort antiquity in variety of ways. A 6-month old object can appear to be 400 years old. This can happen. So the archaeological sites, these things can also happen. How certain things have gone into the earth, maybe an earthquake happened and certain things, recent things went and disappeared in that earthquake, and then some archaeological site, archaeologist found it, and he says, oh, it is 10,000 years old. So those evidence could be disturbed and actually disputed, and they could be distorted. But the cosmological facts cannot be distorted. The movement of the planets, the movement of the stars, the appearance of different stars cannot be distorted. And in Mahabharata and Ramayana, in both the writings, the movement and appearance of the night sky has been explained on a particular occasion. Many occasions it has been explained in both Mahabharata and Ramayana. I am not an expert on that, but some experts have come out with their own scientific explanation that how a particular combination of stars in the sky was existing, say, 10,000 years back in time, and since then that combination never appeared. This can be now simulated on the computer. And they can find out that 10,000 years this was the combination of the stars. And this has never happened identical way since then till today. So if that combination has been mentioned in, say, Ramayana, it means the Ramayana has to be at least 10,000 years old. This is the way these, you know, scientists who are working on these, deciding the age of different scriptures of India, they are working on those. And they are simulating the night sky to discover and to actually understand the description given in those scriptures and to then relate that scripture to its antiquity depending on the that existence of that night sky on a particular day in the past. So the astronomical knowledge actually helps us tremendously to decide on the antiquity of things. And there the evidence cannot be distorted because the movements of the cosmic bodies is in billions and trillions of years. It is not in like our movement of days and hours and seconds. It's not like that. That is in billions. For example, sun has been there for billions of years. Even today, let me give you another example of this. There was a time up to Galileo that Western scientists and all the Western people thought that the earth was the center and the sun was revolving around the earth. When the Galileo came for the first time, he said, sun is the center and earth is moving around it. He was put in prison for several decades. His literature was not published. He was punished by the church, Western church. And finally, after more than 60, 70 years, they accepted that Galileo was right. Now, this thing has been mentioned in our scriptures thousands years back in time. So, one has to see sometimes the Western scientists are highly inobjective. Let me give you another example. I was in Budapest long time back, and there was a talk by a French scientist who came there to one of the well-known universities of Hungary. I just went. The title of the talk was Chronology of Time. Now, based on the Western philosophy, particularly the Bible, this gentleman started the chronology of time with about 4,000 years before Jesus Christ's birth. And he explained that the whole universe came into being. That is what Bible says about 4,000 years back before Jesus Christ. And then he explained the chronology, what happened after that, what happened after that. At the end of the talk, I asked him simply one question, that what was there before 4,000 years? Whether time existed, whether space existed. He had no answer to that. And that has been answered in our scriptures quite well. They say that it is eternal. It has been going on forever. It is not that there is a point in at which it was created. No. They only talk about the cycles of dissolution, that after a particular period, things are dissolved and then they are reappearing after a particular period. And those cycles have been explained. Like as per our cycle of yugas, we had said that a particular yug actually lasts 4.32 billion years, 4.32 kharab वर्ष, मनुष्य, man years. human years. This has been explained in Vedas, in Bhagavad Puran, and in many other scriptures, even in mathematical terms in by Aryabhatta and others. This goes back to several thousand years. Now, scientists till recently, they thought that Earth was only 4,000 years old. Now they believe that Earth is more than 4 billion years old, which our scientists had told that the cycle of the appearance of life is 4.32 billion years. And after that, the night of Brahma comes when everything is dissolved. And when the day of Brahma starts, again the life begins. So that cycle is cycle of yugas, which has also been referred by Lord Krishna in Bhagavad Gita. And that cycle is 4.32 billion years. The life continues, then it is dissolved, then again it appears. So it is not that the earth and the planets and the system did not exist. The system existed, but the dissolution happens and then they reappear after a particular period. And this is a very systematic way of doing it. So the science has been able to understand these things now to some extent, not fully yet. In fact, the knowledge of Surya Siddhant on astronomy is much deeper and much clearer than that of modern science even today, with all the you know research they have done and all the observations they have done. Despite all that, so how this happens now? This happens. How do we get that knowledge? There was I think it was Luke. His name was Luke. He was a Greek, uh, healer. He actually expounded on the property of various plants without any experimentation. Like in Ayurveda, we have the property of plants. In those days, there were no laboratories existing like the one we have today. How did they come to know that हल्दी के ये गुण हैं, नींबू के ये गुण हैं, आंवले के ये गुण हैं? हैं? They got to know that the jeera should have this quality and it should be used in this purpose and rye should be used on this purpose. They came out, or ajwain should be used for this purpose. Now all they came out. They came out because they had that mental power to assimilate with that plant and then get to know the qualities of the plant. This was also done by this gentleman Luke in Greece. So these things are possible if the mental level of a person has risen to a level where he can mentally travel to different planets, to different solar systems in the universe, and then can tell you this is how the universe is. And that is what I think happened with our rishis and sages. They mentally contemplated and traveled to the world in that way. And that is why we call that pind. Pind is our body. Our body is a prototype of the universe. If we can understand our body properly, then we can understand the universe properly. And everything that exists in this universe is also part of the human body. This has been said in our Puranas. So all this knowledge which is given in our documents is not a fiction. It is based on the true science because it is the Western science which has been proven wrong time and again. They are proving wrong. They didn't know how whether the sun revolves around the earth or the earth revolves around the sun. Even today, they don't know how many planets are there in the solar system. We always knew Navgraha. Navgraha is part of our daily life in India. The Janam Kundali is based on Navgraha. They know the movement of these planets precisely. The Panchang, which has been developed, is based on all those precise movements. And we are the only country in the world where we have the months as per the solar system and year as per month as per the lunar system and year as per the solar system, and then we integrate the two every 3 years by having an additional month. And the details of the movement of different planets are given in Panchang. Those who understand that, they know. This is a very intricate science, which modern scientists don't know even today. So it is my submission that without understanding the depth of our knowledge, it would not be proper to comment on it. I have this table here. And you can find this table in the book of Burgess. Let me show you this table here, which has come from Surya Siddhant. Now, this is what they call it sidereal revolution of planets. This has been given in Surya Siddhant. The table given below has been taken from page 168 of the translation of Surya Siddhant by Ebenezer Burgess, published by the Journal of American Oriental Society, Volume 6, pages 1858, Volume 6, 1858, 1860, and precisely on this table on page number 141. One can marvel at the accuracy of the calculations provided by the Indian astrologers thousands years of back in time. In this book, I have also given the link to the journal here. And this table tells you that, for example, Mercury revolves around the sun as per the Surya Siddhant. It takes 87 days, 23 hours, 16 minutes, and 22.3 seconds. That is what Surya Siddhant said. There's another, writing in India, which is called Siddhant Shiromani. It says that it takes 87 days, 23 hours, 16 minutes, and 41.5 seconds. And what does modern science say? It says it takes 87 days, 23 hours, 15 minutes, and 43.9 seconds. Now the difference here is minuscule. And I still believe that the writings of ancient India are more accurate than the modern science, though the difference is here less than 1 minute in the overall, duration of the cycle. Like if we take the Mars, for example, the Mars revolves around the Sun as per Surya Siddhant 686 days, 23 hours, 56 minutes, and 23.5 seconds. As per modern science, 686 days, 23 hours, 30 minutes, and 41.4 seconds. The difference is less than 20 minutes here. But I still believe that Surya Siddhant should be accurate, more accurate than the modern science. So this is the kind of accuracy given in our ancient writings. And this has been translated by a British gentleman, Burgess, and published in the American Oriental Society. It is not my creation or any Indian's creation, because unfortunately we don't trust our own scholars very much. we give a lot of weight to the Western scholars. This has happened because we have been ruled by the Western world for hundreds of years, and we have developed an inferiority complex. So it is time that we understand our scriptures, we understand the science behind them, and we respect them. If we do that, I think we will get the real depth of the knowledge which is there in those scriptures. So I'll conclude my session here today. Thank you very much. And if you have any queries, any comments, please do write those comments on the YouTube or otherwise. Thank you.